Welcome to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show with Corey and Justin. Here they are, the Fourth and Long Fantasy Brothers.
Welcome to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. My name is Corey, and I am here with my actual brother, Justin.
Hi, this is Justin.
Justin, today we're going to be talking about fantasy breakouts. You're going to give us 5 guys that we're going to touch on and talk about. But before we do, it had been a while. We had gone a couple weeks without a big hammer being dropped, and one just dropped this past week, Justin. Rookie Travis Etienne seems like he might possibly be out for the whole season. This has major impacts on upcoming drafts.
What a blow for the Jaguars offense and the rookie running back Travis Etienne. Foot injury here, was seen in a walking boot, hobbling on crutches after the game Monday night against the Saints. Not good news for a guy who was set to really establish himself as one of the more dynamic sort of dual threat running backs in the NFL. First round pick from the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's unfortunate for the young rookie. I'm sure he's feeling it today, but now we got to look forward, Corey, right? We look at James Robinson, the guy who had the most to lose from the NFL draft, now has the most to gain from this injury. I think now with this injury to Etienne, it propels James Robinson back into the top 15-ish running back conversation after being buried more in the 20s and 30s. I'm curious what your initial reaction, Corey, is to the Etienne injury and the impact on James Robinson.
Yeah, Justin, that backfield gets a lot clearer now with Travis Etienne out of the way. You feel bad for the kid, but for James Robinson, he is back in the fantasy good graces. I don't see Carlos Hyde as a threat. I know he will be a thing, but there was always a little bit of something there in Jacksonville, even last year. Robinson probably won't have the role that he had last year where he's on the field basically the whole time, but there's no way you can look at this and not say, all right, James Robinson has to at least be considered an RB2 again. He's no longer in that RB3, RB4 range for people.
Yeah, if you already drafted and you cashed in on the late round price of James Robinson, you're probably smiling right now because of this injury news, because James Robinson now re-enters the high end RB2 discussion as a guy that could push for a similar output as he did in his rookie season, Corey. I think it'll be interesting to see how Urban Meyer divides up these running back snaps, right? He has an affinity for guys that he's played with before, right? Coached before in Carlos Hyde. But I think this is James Robinson's backfield to lose at this point. I think he's going to be a rock solid RB2. If you already drafted, congratulations. And I think we'll see his ADP and his ranking skyrocket here for the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, Justin, and this is the reason why you don't draft early when it comes to fantasy football drafts. Now, Today, we're going to be touching on 5 guys that you, Justin, think are primed to really break out in fantasy football this year. They're ready to take the next step and be recognized as fantasy stars. So with that being said, let's get to it.
On today's show.
All right, Justin, you've got 5 players who you see as breakouts coming into this fantasy football season. And I'm pretty excited to hear this list. Justin, why don't you get things started with your first breakout player for the 2021 fantasy football season?
Yeah, so I'm going to get this list started off with Denver Broncos rookie running back Javonte Williams. Corey, I think Javonte is ready to break out. Javonte is that sort of do-it-all back capable of playing on all 3 downs. He's way ahead of where he needs to be as it relates to pass protection, and he's passed the eye test from my perspective. Now, when I watch him, Corey, I see a blend, and I'm curious if you think that this is a good sort of comparison, is I see a blend between Chris Carson and David Montgomery, who are both, solid RB2s in fantasy right now. I'm curious, do you think that's a pretty decent comparison for what you've seen for Javonte so far?
Yeah, Justin, I would say it is. It's definitely tough to put too much stock in preseason games, but you're right. From the eye test, he looks like he's running in a way that he should really be sort of a prototypical RB2. It's just the question of whether or not you think he's going to be that RB2 this year or next year. He's definitely going to be that guy who goes in with the Chris Carsons, the David Montgomerys, those just strong, consistent backs. But what is your thought with Melvin, and how do you think that's going to work out?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? There's going to be a number of weeks this season, especially the early part of the season, where Melvin Gordon's going to play a role. And I talked a little bit about this on our At This Time Next Year episode a few weeks ago, where I talked about Javonte Williams being a top 12 running back next year at this time. I think we see a path sort of similar to what Cam Akers from the LA Rams did last year, where, he came out and wasn't really totally involved in the offense as much as we otherwise thought he would be. The season progressed. He, gained control of that backfield and really performed down the stretch. I think we see something similar here with Javonte Williams in 2021. And I like the prospects of him becoming a rock solid, sort of RB2 before the season's end. And, with Melvin Gordon all but out of Denver potentially at the end of this season, I think it's very possible we may be talking about Javonte Williams as an RB1 heading into next season, Corey. I think Javonte Williams is primed for a breakout season this year. He's not all that expensive in drafts. He's right around that RB 24-ish range because of the uncertainty with Melvin Gordon. But I like the prospects of him really breaking out in 2021 and becoming the next big young rookie running back.
Yeah, Justin, there's a good chance that Javonte is at his discounted price this year and for only this year, because the path does seem to be clearing a bit when we're talking about what next year might look like for Javonte Williams. So you just got to hope everything trends right for this guy. So there's a rookie. Justin, how about a veteran who's getting a little post-hype sleep here that could become a breakout this year when everyone thought it might be last year for him?
Yeah, my next guy on this list, number 2, is going to be Los Angeles Rams tight end Tyler Higbee. Corey, we saw glimpses of greatness from Higbee in 2019, just 2 seasons ago, when he was, the tight end in Los Angeles. And he was averaging right around 11 targets a game, over 100 receiving yards a game, the end of the 2019 season. And he was a league winner that season, Corey. He really was. Now, there was hype last year, right, like he talked about. But Higbee really struggled and left a bit of a sour taste in most people's mouths last year. Well, I'm here for the post-type breakout from Higbee. I see a really solid fantasy season coming for Higbee right now, especially with the prospects of the addition of Matt Stafford in at quarterback. There's a few reasons why I think Higbee really breaks out this year. And I think one of the most important things, on top of Stafford being the quarterback now for the Rams, is that he's the only show in town, right? Over the last few years, Higbee's been splitting time with Gerald Everett, who's now in Seattle. And when Higbee's been given the entire role, he's really harnessed it and really performed pretty well. I think we should be expecting something similar to what we saw, maybe not totally what we saw at the end of the 2019 season, maybe scale that back by, 75%. But I think 70-plus receiving yards a game, a touchdown here and there with a half dozen or so catches every week is certainly possible in this LA Rams high-powered offense. I talked a little bit about Matt Stafford as well. He does have an affinity for tight ends. You look at his historical sort of usage of tight ends going back to guys like Brandon Pettigrew and Eric Ebron and then TJ Hawkinson last year. Now, Higbee right now is currently being drafted right around that sort of tight end 10 range. And I think he has, honestly, the most upside of any of those tight ends going in that range right now. I think 800 yards, right around double-digit 10 touchdowns are within reach, and a top 5 finish is possible for Tyler Higbee this year, Corey.
Yeah, Justin, it seems like this guy really has the opportunity to excel in an offense that could be high-powered. Let's say the marriage with Stafford and the Rams and that whole offense is good, but it's not as high profile as like you and I have talked about a lot this offseason. Do you still think Higbee can be productive with guys like Kupp and Robert Woods still on the offense? Or if this offense isn't a wagon, is Tyler Higbee doomed to fall back into that tight end 2 conversation?
I mean, it's entirely possible, right? It certainly is. And the thing is you're not spending a lot to get Tyler Higbee on draft day, right? He's going around that back end, tight end 1 sort of area, right? 10 to 12. So you're most likely not spending an early round pick on him. So he doesn't perform, if he doesn't end up becoming the tight end I think he could be, right, in this breakout sort of scenario, you could just drop him, and there's going to be other guys on the wire that you could potentially roll with. You just have to wait and see. But I really am buying into this LA Rams offense this year, Corey. I think Tyler Higbee is going to be definitely third in line for targets behind the mentioned Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, but I think there's going to be plenty of passes to go around in this offense. I think Higbee will be flirting with 8 to 10 targets per game.
Yeah, Justin, he's the least expensive option of the Rams offensive weapons that are at least relatively fantasy viable. So it's a good bet because you're betting on a team that could definitely have a high-powered offense, but a guy who's still coming at pretty cheap despite the fact that the narrative is surrounding them.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is when you're looking at, we talked about this last week on our sleeper episode, right? When you're looking for guys that are, that could either break out or be sleepers, you want to look at, what could be high-powered, high-potential offenses. And I think the Rams will be one of the best. So when you're looking for those guys that you think will be values at their current ADP, guys that could really break out, I'm looking at good offenses, and I think the Rams are going to be one of the best this year.
Nice, Justin. Well, talking about price and expensive, why don't you talk to us about a running back who got a little too expensive last year, but definitely has that post-type appeal again this year?
Yeah, another post-type guy here on my list. We're going to talk about Kansas City Chiefs second-year running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Corey, as you mentioned, he was a popular pick last year. The hype really sort of got out of control as we approached the season. I think it was by late August, early September, when the majority of drafts were happening. The guy had moved into, the top 12, top 10 in some circles. I mean, he was being drafted in the later part of the first round in some fantasy circles. And the recipe was there with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's historical usage of running backs, the offense around him, right? The recipe was there for a really dominant sort of rookie season in the mold of a guy like Kareem Hunt a few years ago, right, with the Chiefs. But it was just mainly okay, right? It wasn't a blow you away sort of season. And when you're picking a guy in the first or second round of fantasy drafts, you want to go for those sort of superstar, sort of league winning fantasy assets. And Edwards-Helaire just wasn't that. He was rock solid, right? It wasn't like he was bad by any means. He was rock solid as a running back 2 on your team, but you were drafting him at an elite RB1 sort of price. Corey, Clyde found himself with that, that sort of full role at the beginning of the season, but sort of faded as the season went on. The Chiefs signed Lev Bell. They integrated Darrell Williams a lot more than they otherwise probably should have. And I think one of the biggest reasons why that happened last year was because Clyde really struggled at the goal line. He had multiple attempts at the beginning of the season to punch short runs in at the goal line and really struggled. The talent is not gone, Corey, for Clyde, and plays for one of the best offenses in football in the Chiefs. And the Chiefs have really invested in the offensive line this offseason, right? Making notable additions, whether it's Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, right? I mean, they've made a lot of additions to that offensive line. And I think that Edwards-Helaire will be one of the main beneficiaries of that. Now, he doesn't need to be a bell cow sort of back, right? I think Darrell Williams will still be involved in this offense to an extent this coming season. But I think the recipe's there this year for a really a post-type sort of breakout season from Helaire, where he's seeing right around 15 touches a game. And I think he's going to return that RB2, if not RB1 value. I see a breakout season here, Corey, coming for CEH.
Yeah, Justin, this is one of those situations where Clyde just got way too overhyped last year. And now it's the situation where so many people were burned that he's been tanked. And there is a lot of appeal to what he could potentially bring to a fantasy roster because he's still tied to a really, really prolific offense. And he is the starting running back. And, I think there's going to be a situation this year where, okay, they tried it out with CEH and a combination of Lev Bell last year, and Lev just didn't work out. So I think CEH will be given sort of the first opportunity. And a lot can be said sort of at the fact that we got to give rookies a break last year. It was not a normal year. It had to be hard coming in as a running back into a new offense. I think Clyde has a really, really good shot at being a bit of a better option this year for fantasy.
Yeah, I've got Edwards-Helaire currently ranked as my running back 13. I've got him just behind guys like Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, and Najee Harris. Antonio Gibson as well. He's right behind that group right now, but it would not at all surprise me if at the end of the season he leapfrogged all of those guys and reinserted himself back into that sort of back-end RB1 conversation. I think there's a lot of upside when you're talking about Clyde and the ability for him to really grow after his first season. And again, right, we're talking about investing in players on good offenses, and the Chiefs are a damn good offense.
That they are, Justin. Now, talking about good offenses, given the fact that we're seeing a second Bronco on this list, makes me think that you think that they have the potential to be a potential breakout offense this year. Why don't you talk about a wide receiver, maybe not necessarily the wide receiver that people are expecting too?
My next guy on this list is going to be, I'm going to go with Broncos second-year wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy. Corey, I think Jerry Jeudy's ready to become the player we all kind of thought he could be and knew he could be after he was drafted in the first round out of Alabama last year. For a rookie season, it wasn't totally bad, right? He did have some issues with drops, right? There's no denying that, but a lot of the passes that were coming his way were certainly not catchable, right? Deemed catchable from that perspective. But you have to also keep in mind that we're comparing Jerry Jeudy's rookie season, which was pretty good for a rookie, to some of the better rookie seasons we've seen in recent memories, right? You look at guys like Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, right? I mean, all of these guys really performed admirably in their rookie seasons, and it's difficult to take those comparisons, and kind of bump them up against each other, because Jeudy was good, right? And, I don't think the talent's gone, right? Looking at my last argument with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? I'm going to bank on talent. And Jeudy was one of the more heralded wide receiver prospects, coming into the NFL draft last year. And I think his ability to really establish himself as, sort of a rock solid wide receiver 2 this season is without a doubt there. He's one of the best route runners in the NFL. I will totally stick by that. He just looks so good on tape, and he glides. He's like a gazelle, Corey. He just glides across the field. It's crazy to watch him play. And I see a world where both Jeudy and Sutton are wide receiver 2s this year. But I think Jeudy has the upside to really break out and become one of those more generational talents at the position this season.
Yeah, Justin, and Jerry Jeudy's main knock from last year really comes down to something that is usually not a sticky stat. Drops usually don't carry over from year to year. Those usually end up going away, and that was his big issue. If you want to hear more about this over the offseason, I specifically did a video on both Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton and why I both think they're really, really strong wide receivers. I'm more on the Sutton train, but I definitely am not out on Jerry Jeudy. I think the talent is definitely still there, and I can see a very successful career still happening for Jerry Jeudy. It's just a tough situation in Denver. You got to hope that the Denver situation is going to clear up, right?
Yeah, that's the linchpin in this entire argument, is the ability for whoever is at quarterback this season for the Broncos to be able to deliver catchable passes to Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton and Noah Fant, right? And the running back, whether that's Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, or both of them combined. I think the offense on paper, Corey, looks really good, right? You put a guy like Aaron Rodgers or, another prolific sort of passer in this offense, and I feel like this offense would be probably regarded as one of the best in the NFL, just with the collection of skill players they have. And Jerry Jeudy is no exception to that. I have him currently ranked. I have him and Sutton ranked back to back right now because I really don't know, who I'm leaning towards more. I have Jeudy one spot ahead of him right now just because of the upside, but I have him in the same range as guys like Kenny Golladay and Brandon Ayuk and Tyler Lockett and, Odell Beckham Jr., for instance. And I think there's a world where, he potentially leapfrogs all of those guys and gets into the conversation with the next group up, which is more guys like Amari Cooper and Terry McLaurin and Cooper Kupp and Chris Godwin. I think it's very possible that we may be talking about him in that sort of range of rock solid wide receiver 2s when we approach next season.
Yeah, could easily see it with Jerry Jeudy. Could definitely see him making that leap. And even still, Teddy Bridgewater last year in Carolina was able to maintain a couple of fantasy viable receivers. There's no saying he can't do that if he is the starter in Denver. Or, Drew Lock has been able to do it too. Courtland Sutton's been a fantasy viable receiver. Last year was a bit of a mess, but we talked about the reasons why that was. So let's get into our last breakout player, Justin, of the season. Let's talk about one running back that you have been very excited about. Now let's really just let you explain away why you're really feeling good things about running back Antonio Gibson.
Corey, I've been high on Antonio Gibson ever since last season when he came out of Memphis, was picked in the 3rd round by the Washington football team, the converted wide receiver. People have to remember, Corey, that Antonio Gibson was learning a new position last year, right? He was not a running back. He was a wide receiver, sort of hybrid player at Memphis, and had not really been given a ton of opportunity to really establish himself as a collegiate running back prospect. But he was drafted as if he could be that sort of dynamo, all-purpose sort of player, and that's exactly what he did last year, Corey. I give him a whole heck of a lot of credit for what he was able to do in his rookie season against top-flight NFL talent, learning a new position that's not exactly the easiest position to learn in the NFL, right? There's a lot of nuances to the running back position in the NFL, and I think Antonio Gibson handled it really, really well. Gibson quickly established himself as one of the better, if not one of the best rookie running backs we've seen in some time. Like I said, learning a new position, but also being able to finish top 12 in fantasy scoring last year is a testament to how much upside this guy really has. They've talked a lot about in training camp this season about how Antonio Gibson has really embraced this new role, right? He's embraced the idea of learning the intricacies of the running back position, right? Pass protection, right? Finding the right holes, reading defenses, right? Being able to communicate at the line of scrimmage with his quarterback and with his offensive line. And I think, Corey, that Antonio Gibson's got a lot of room to grow this season. I think we see him bump his production up by roughly 25%. I think he'll be right up there with double-digit touchdowns, right around 1,000 rushing yards, and probably 400 or 500 receiving yards. I think we're going to be looking back at this season as the season when Antonio Gibson really breaks out.
Justin, I like it. And Gibson looks just so good on film. I mean, you can tell the guy just has a different level to him when it comes to getting into the open field, breaking tackles, and making moves in the open field to make guys miss. It's a really, really exciting player to watch. And I think Antonio Gibson, like, the sky is really the limit with this guy. I know there's that converted wide receiver narrative around him, and I think that still scares people off. But if you just look at the talent from last year, of all the rookies, he's got a really, really appealing ceiling going on. And we did a video review. As a matter of fact, Justin, you did a video review of him over the offseason, and just watch that. And you can just see, oh, this guy has a little something different inside of him.
Yeah, and for all those people that are concerned about Gibson's usage in the preseason so far, right? McKissick still coming out and playing on third downs. I really don't care about that, right? I mean, I think Gibson's going to get every single first and second down snap that he can. He doesn't need to be an every down sort of Christian McCaffrey, bell cow sort of back to return top 12 production at the position. I think we see him again grow in terms of catching the ball. I think we also see him grow as it relates to his ability to play on the field more snaps. Last year, McKissick really dominated snap share most weeks, which I don't think a lot of people really realize at this point. I think Gibson's only got room to grow, and I think a top 10 fantasy running back season is well in the realm of possibilities for Gibson this year, Corey.
Yeah, Justin, I agree with you. And on top of that, you just have to understand that long-term, you got to love a guy who gets spelled every so often. It's led to Aaron Jones having a really good, successful consecutive years. It's led to guys who have been able to stay healthy. It's those types of situations that I love for fantasy football, because Antonio Gibson's a lot of fun to watch, and I don't want to see him break down too early. So it's really, really exciting to see him succeed in that rookie year. And let's hope the sophomore season just makes things even better.
Yep, couldn't agree more. So there we go. That's our breakout list for the 2021 fantasy season. Again, just to quickly recap who we went through, we started with Denver running back Javonte Williams. We then went into LA Rams tight end Tyler Higbee, Kansas City Chiefs running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Denver Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, and then we wrapped up our list with Washington football team running back Antonio Gibson. So that will do it, Corey. Please remember to comment and like on this video on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and find us anywhere you can find podcasts. I also, Corey, want to mention as well to our audience that this will be, for at least the foreseeable future, the last episode you'll be on with me today. I'm going to be flying solo here as we move through the 2021 season, so you could focus on your professional aspirations. Wanted to thank you for your time and look forward to having you back on the show, Corey. The show's always here for you.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, Justin. I have enjoyed doing this now for the past, year and a half or so that we've done this. And I can't wait to come back on. Again, like you said, just some professional career aspirations that I'm looking to pursue and continue on with. It's going to make my schedule pretty tight, but I can tell you what, I'm always going to make time listening to the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. It has been an enjoyment. And if you don't mind, Justin, I'd like to do one last sign off before I go on my hiatus, because anything else that you can do to show some support will be very much appreciated. I'm Corey.
And I'm Justin.
And this has been the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. We will see you all next time.
Royalty-free music courtesy of Ben Sound. The views and opinions expressed on today's episode are that of the Fourth and Long Fantasy Football Show. Remember to like and subscribe.